So it feels like at the moment all these MIS companies are sort of they've either been bought, sort of about to be bought potentially. Apart from Bromcom, which has sort of stayed, sold privately owned, as it were. But they're all sort of lining themselves up. It feels like on the starting blocks, and just in case Sims loses more traction, and they all
Yeah.
look like they're about to. It's like the starting gun is about to go off. If you were a betting man, and maybe this is a bit of an unfair question, really, which one would you? Where do you see them? Sort of well, I suppose the question is, where do you see their differentiators, and where do you see that that potentially? So, as an example, would Scholar do you think they're going to take most of the primary market still, or do you think actually others are going to come in and shape some of that?
I think a lot of it depends on the government and the academisation and whether that continues, because primaries will like to be with primaries, and then Scholar Pack have got their market, but Arbor are pretty much the only contender against, from our perspective, that have got a proper product that delivers and very slick software, and it's really good. We love
Yeah.
that. But my money, there's an outsider now, isn't there, in the race, and they've just bought iSAMs, and I know how quickly these guys can move and what their ambition is, and we know that iSAMs is it's a blue chip product, so I think that could be really interesting in the next couple of years, and I think that gives Arbor a nice competitor to have, because it's good, it's healthy, and I still maintain that Capita have the only proper secondary product. That's my personal view, and I know a lot of my SBS colleagues would share that, because the secondary school is completely different to a primary, and the requirements are much more sophisticated, and that if you get that right as an MIS provider, then you've got the all through software. And Capita have that, and I don't see their market diminishing much on that for a while.
Well, and the stats show, ultimately at the moment, Sims has either grown actually in some ways in the secondary market, mainly from Advanced, because I think Advanced is, probably towards the end of its life in the education sector, I think personally, but it's it's basically grown when it comes to secondary, where in the primary sector it's definitely it's diminishing. But I agree with you. I think it's really hard as well to get a really strong secondary product. I think some of the others, I think Arbor and Bromcom have probably got to a sort of almost a Me Too scenario, which I think is a bit of a shame, because you actually want them to be much further ahead, especially seeing Sims haven't brought out the cloud-based product yet as well. Do you think the cloud-based product, by the way, in Sims 8 is as needed in the secondary market or would you go and do a different strategy altogether?
Wow, I mean, Sims Capita getting Sims 8 right is essential.
Yeah,
for everyone who's a Sims support unit provider. For the secondary market for Capita, I just can't see that happening for a long time. I really can't. Well, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? How long has Sims 8 been in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's been about 8 years altogether. In the sense of, if you take away some of the early sort of trials, tribulations, but it's interesting, because I think with the secondary schools, because they have already got servers for other things, it's, even though I still think it's important, don't get me wrong, I think being a cloud-based secondary product is really, really important, but I don't think secondaries will see it as a defining reason to move. I don't think they will go, well, this isn't in the cloud, so that's it, we're not going to go. I think Mats is different, because I think Mats want to show that they're forward thinking, they're looking ahead and everything else. But I think individual secondary schools, I'm not sure they see it as a priority. I think it's important, but I don't think they see it as a priority necessarily right now.
And the Mats secondary market for MIS is probably Arbor's. Arbor's alone, and that is really very good. But I mean, the maintained, because there's still so many secondaries that are not moving to academies, and they're going to stay with Sims because people's jobs are tied to it as well. And I think that will be a gradual change as well over the next years, where the data manager role won't be required in schools in the future, because that can be quite easily, well, not easily, but as the products get better and less sophisticated, then the roles are not required as much, and they can then form part of the managed service that private companies can provide.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, you can see a number of other roles within the school basically being freed up for that particular purpose. You know, even if it's reducing down the number of people doing some of the activities because of the intuitiveness of the actual products themselves. No, I totally agree. It's interesting because actually, in some ways, the strategy at one point was very much that bring in the Sims 8 product, but bit by bit, you know, like Sims Options is out there, and then Sims Exams is going to be out there. So it's almost felt like more like an upgrade for secondary schools, which I don't think has happened. But you know, that's what, you know, well, it hasn't happened at the moment. So apart from Sims Options, but I think there is. I think they could still use that as a strategy, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll watch this space. As I say, this market, even in 2020, the changes have been. If you went to January and looked at now, the changes in the market have been phenomenal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right. I think Iris have been quite astute, really, about waiting to see what was out there and what potentially to look for, and then have identified a product which not necessarily wasn't in the UK market. Well, they had a bit of a foothold in the UK market. I know they had a couple of bats, didn't they? But ultimately, you know, weren't a big presence. So it was quite a bit of interesting.
I mean, if you're a CFO at Matt and you're presented with one company here, and then Iris could sit you down and say, right, from you advertising for a vacancy all the way through to bringing them on the books and employing them and their payroll and your finance system, all of that whole through process, if that can be done in one piece of software, that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to offer. And Iris obviously got PS People, Iris Financials, and now an MIS. I don't, from my knowledge, I don't think another company's got that level of capability.
No, not as far-reaching as ours is concerned. Would you ever not see yourselves, the managed services, sort of being almost at the forefront of some of that as well? That conversation.
Absolutely, that's our mission. You know, to be because I think that the human side of this still needs to be. The software won't do the job for you. No. You know, you've still got to have skilled people. My thing is, I don't think that people need to be in the school. I think that the people need to be in the school. Let's pay the teachers more. Let's get better IT in the schools for the pupils. Let's pay the CEO more to do a better job. Let's actually put the money for the back office services as efficiently as possible into a company that exists to do that. That's been since I got into education in 2003, because I came from an outsourcing background. I've always been banging that drum, and only now is it being and it's taken a pandemic, unfortunately, to sort of hit that message home that it can be done, and it's not scary, and it's really helps you, the trust and federations. We're talking to lots of maintained schools that are grouping together to provide a service for them, because a school business manager leaves and they want to employ another one. Well, we're saying you can share the resources and we can provide the day-to-day processing, and we'll do it under a KPI'd SLA. So if we don't do that, you don't pay us, but it's very unlikely that's going to happen.
So that sounds much more attractive, especially for Mats as well. Now, if you go to a Matt and say, look, we'll manage your procurement. So, you know, we'll make sure you get the best of breed. In essence, we'll make sure, you know, whatever solution we think fits your Matt or your schools, your individual schools. So we'll do a bit of an audit, but also we'll make sure that like you say, some of the managed services are performed as well, but also make sure that we look at, you know, how we can reduce down things like energy and how we can change your carbon emissions and so your carbon footprint. You know, if you basically, because that's what you want to do. I agree with you. Take away all those problems that actually a head teacher isn't there to deal with, you know, or lots of people aren't there to deal, you know, shouldn't be there to deal with. They should be focusing on the progression of students. You know, you don't want to be focusing on, you know, electricity and how many light bulbs have you got. And
absolutely, you know, there's some very interesting conversations that we're having in our group at the moment around how we message this, how we put messaging around it, because it can be a little bit scary for schools and trusts. And all we're trying to say is, look, we can take the strain.
Yeah.
That's it really in a nutshell.
Yeah, interesting for sure. I think it is definitely a sort of way forward, and it makes you much more. I think it puts you in a much more stronger position for not only the mats but for yourselves as well. You're not focusing on just one service or two services that you're selling into a mat. You're actually looking at an all-round procurement partner, basically.
Yeah.
You know, an actual partner, rather than just being for one or two things.
That's it.